The ambassador from the Star Kingdom stood 7 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like polished obsidian, and eyes that glowed with the amber light of distant suns. His name was Vexthor, and he had never been so thoroughly confused in his 300 years of diplomatic service. The humans were laughing, not the nervous laughter of species who understood they were outmatched. Not the bitter laughter of those resigned to their fate. This was genuine amusement, the kind that made their faces turn red and caused them to slap their knees in apparent delight. "You find our ultimatum amusing?" Vexthor's voice carried the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. Behind him, holographic displays showed the might of the Star Kingdom. Fleets that blotted out suns, weapons that cracked planets, armies that numbered in the trillions. The human ambassador, a middle-aged woman named Sarah Chen, wiped tears from her eyes. I'm sorry. It's just, you're being so dramatic about it." Vexthor's crystalline armor plates shifted with barely contained anger. "Dramatic? We are offering you a choice. Submit to the Star Kingdom and pay tribute or face complete annihilation. This is the same choice we have given to 47 species. 47 species who now serve the kingdom with gratitude." Right, Sarah said, waving her hand dismissively. She turned to her aide, a young man named Marcus who was still trying to suppress his own grin. "Marcus, do we have those files ready?" "Yes, Ambassador." "Excellent. Vexthor, was it? May I call you Vex?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Here's the thing, Vex. We appreciate you coming all this way. Really, we do. The light-speed dampeners you used to arrive were quite impressive. Very showy. But before we discuss your ultimatum, we'd like to show you something." The holographic display shifted. Now it showed footage from Earth's history, grainy and ancient by galactic standards. Vexthor watched as primitive aircraft dropped crude explosives on cities. He saw massive armies clashing across continents. He witnessed weapons of atomic fire consuming entire populations. "This is your World War II," Sarah explained, her tone now carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. "Roughly 85 million dead. And that was with technology your species would consider laughably primitive." Vexthor remained silent, uncertain where this was leading. Then we had the Cold War. For decades, 2 of our nations pointed enough nuclear weapons at each other to render our entire planet uninhabitable. We came within minutes of launching them on multiple occasions. But we didn't. Do you know why? Cooler heads prevailed? Vexthor offered. Sarah's smile was sharp. "No, because both sides knew that even if they won, they'd lose. Mutually assured destruction. We invented a doctrine based on the absolute certainty of our own annihilation, just to prevent war, and it worked." The display changed again. This time it showed more recent history. Space stations, colony ships, massive construction projects in orbit around Earth and Mars. After we nearly destroyed ourselves, we did something your database probably doesn't have many examples of. We united. Not because we suddenly loved each other, but because we realized that our capacity for violence was so immense that we had to find another way. We took all that creative energy we used for war and pointed it at the stars instead. Marcus stepped forward, adding to the presentation. "We've been monitoring your Empire's communications since you entered our solar system 3 months ago. Your encryption is quite good, but not good enough. We know about your fleet composition, your strategic doctrine, your supply lines, and your command structure." For the first time, Vexthor felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. "We also know about the 17 client species who serve you unwillingly," Sarah continued. "The ones who submitted because they feared extinction. The ones who pay tribute in resources and conscripted soldiers. The ones who pray in secret that someone will free them." "You are bluffing," Vexthor said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Are we?" Sarah leaned forward. "Your flagship, the Eternal Dominion, is currently in orbit around Jupiter. It has a crew of 12,000 and carries enough firepower to level a continent. Its primary weakness is the thermal exhaust port on the aft section, which leads directly to the main reactor. A sufficiently powerful missile could cause a chain reaction." Vexthor's eyes widened. That information was classified at the highest levels. "Your 2nd and 3rd fleet elements are stationed near Saturn's rings, using the ice to mask their heat signatures. Clever. But our telescopes can detect the gravitational distortions your ships create. We've had targeting solutions locked for 6 weeks." The display now showed detailed schematics of Star Kingdom vessels, perfect down to the smallest detail. Information that should have been impossible for the humans to obtain. "Here's what's going to happen." Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. You're going to return to your ship. You're going to report to your superiors that humanity respectfully declines your offer of subjugation, and you're going to recommend that the Star Kingdom leaves this solar system and never returns. And if we refuse? Vexthor's pride demanded he ask, even though he already suspected the answer. Sarah's smile returned, but now it held no warmth. Then you'll discover why we laugh at threats of devastation. Because, Vex, we've been devastated. We've devastated ourselves. We've looked into the abyss of our own extinction and decided to step back from the edge. But make no mistake, we know exactly where that edge is and we know how to push others over it. She stood, indicating the meeting was over. We've uploaded a complete analysis of your fleet's vulnerabilities to your personal datapad. Consider it a gift. A reminder that if we can see your weaknesses this clearly, we can exploit them just as easily. Vexthor looked down at his datapad. Sure enough, files were appearing, each one detailing another security breach, another tactical vulnerability, another piece of intelligence that should have been impossible for a species as young as humanity to possess. We humans have a saying, Marcus added, as Vexthor moved toward the door. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. We're being kind right now, giving you this warning. We're being kind by letting you leave. But if you come back with hostile intent, you'll meet the side of humanity that spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. As Vexthor walked through the corridors of the human space station, he passed by windows showing Earth below. It looked so peaceful, so blue and green and beautiful. It was hard to imagine that the species living there had once brought themselves to the brink of destruction. Perhaps that was what made them so dangerous. They knew exactly what devastation looked like, because they had already lived through it. Vexthor materialized aboard the Eternal Dominion through the transport beam, his mind still reeling from the encounter. The bridge crew snapped to attention, their various species all unified in their service to the Star Kingdom. A Krillian tactical officer, a Morgoth navigator, a Zephyrite communications specialist, all working in perfect coordination. Ambassador, welcome back, Fleet Commander Zarketh said, rising from his command throne. The old warrior's scales were crossed with scars from a dozen campaigns. I trust the humans have seen reason and accepted our terms? They have not. Vexthor's voice was hollow. Commander, we need to speak privately. In the commander's ready room, Vexthor downloaded the files the humans had given him. Zarketh's confident expression slowly dissolved as he reviewed the information. This is impossible, the commander whispered. These specifications are from our most secure databases. The thermal exhaust vulnerability was only discovered 3 months ago during routine maintenance. Only 6 people in the entire fleet know about it. They know about it now, Vexthor said. And that's not all. Commander, they've been watching us for months. They know our formations, our tactics, our standard operating procedures. They've analyzed our weapons and found the optimal countermeasures. Zarketh slammed his fist on the desk, causing the metal to dent. A bluff. Psychological warfare. They hacked some low-level systems and extrapolated the rest. I thought so too until I saw this. Vexthor pulled up another file. It showed a detailed analysis of the Eternal Dominion's shield harmonics, complete with fluctuation patterns and recharge cycles. This data could only come from real-time monitoring. They're watching us right now, Commander, probably listening to this conversation. The 2 officers stared at each other in silence, both suddenly aware that they might not be alone. Meanwhile, on Earth's orbital defense station Vigilance, Sarah Chen watched the feed from the micro-drones that had attached themselves to the Star Kingdom flagship during its initial approach. The drones were no larger than dust particles, virtually undetectable, and they transmitted everything back to human intelligence. Think they'll leave? Marcus asked, bringing her a cup of coffee. 50-50, Sarah replied. Pride is a powerful thing. The Star Kingdom has never backed down from a subjugation before. They might decide to make an example of us. And if they do, Sarah took a sip of her coffee. Then we show them why you don't threaten a species that survived itself. Back on the Eternal Dominion, Zarketh was composing a message to the Star Kingdom High Command. He chose his words carefully, knowing that admitting weakness could end his career or his life. The humans possess intelligence capabilities far beyond their apparent technological level, he dictated. Recommend strategic reassessment before engaging in hostilities. They are not the primitive species our scouts indicated. The response came back within hours. faster than normal space-time communication should allow. The High Council had been monitoring the situation closely. Your concern is noted, Fleet Commander. However, the Star Kingdom does not negotiate with species who refuse tribute. You will demonstrate our power through a limited strike. Destroy one of their outer colonies. Show them the price of defiance. Zarketh read the order 3 times, each reading filling him with more dread. Ambassador, the High Council has ordered a demonstration attack. Then we are fools, Vexthor said quietly. I looked into that human female's eyes, Commander. She was not bluffing. She was not afraid. She looked at me the way I might look at a petulant child waving a stick. Nevertheless, we have our orders. Helm set course for the Mars colony. Weapons, prepare a planetary bombardment solution. We will destroy their terraforming domes. The fleet began to move, massive ships breaking orbit around Jupiter and accelerating toward the red planet. It would take 6 hours to reach firing range. On Mars, alarms began to sound. The colony housed 3 million people, mostly scientists and engineers working on the century-long project to make the planet habitable. Evacuation was impossible in the time they had, but evacuation wasn't the plan. Colonel James Martinez stood in the command center of Olympus Station, watching the approaching fleet on his displays. All batteries, this is command. Weapons free. I repeat, weapons free. Across Mars and its 2 moons, installations that had been carefully disguised as mining operations and research facilities suddenly came online. Massive railgun batteries emerged from beneath the rust-colored soil. Missile silos opened on Phobos and Deimos. Orbital platforms that had been playing dead suddenly lit up with targeting systems. Sir, we have firing solutions on all enemy vessels, his tactical officer reported. Hold fire until they're committed to their attack run, Martinez ordered. Let them think they have the advantage. The Star Kingdom fleet entered Mars orbit in a standard bombardment formation, their weapons charging for the strike that would level the domes and kill everyone inside. Fire, Martinez said calmly. The sky above Mars erupted with light. Railgun slugs traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light punched through shields like they weren't there. Missiles with AI guidance systems evaded point defense and detonated against hulls. The orbital platforms unleashed focused particle beams that carved through armor plating. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, chaos reigned. Shields at 40%. Multiple hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. We're taking fire from every direction. Impossible! Where did these weapons come from? Zarketh gripped his command throne as the ship rocked from another impact. Sir, the Retribution has lost main power. The Conqueror is venting atmosphere. The Destiny is breaking apart. All ships evasive maneuvers. Return fire! But the human defenses were too well coordinated. Every time a Star Kingdom ship tried to line up a shot on the surface installations, they were hit by another barrage from a different angle. The orbital platforms worked in perfect synchronization, sharing targeting data and covering each other's weak points. Within 15 minutes, the engagement was over. 3 Star Kingdom ships were destroyed. 5 more were crippled and drifting. The rest were fleeing back toward Jupiter, including the Eternal Dominion with a gaping hole in its port side. The Mars colony hadn't taken a single hit. Zarketh collapsed into his command throne, watching the damage reports scroll across his screens. They had lost over 8,000 crew members. The pride of the Star Kingdom fleet had been routed by what they thought was a minor human outpost. Get me the High Council, he said quietly, and prepare a full battle analysis. They need to know what we're truly facing. On Olympus Station, Martinez allowed himself a small smile. Secure from battle stations. Begin damage assessment and casualty reports. Sir, we took no casualties. The enemy never got a shot off at the colony. I know, Lieutenant. I know. Martinez thought about all the years of preparation, all the hidden weapons installations, all the strategic planning. Humanity had learned long ago that the best defense was to never look like you needed to defend anything. Sarah Chen received the battle report at her desk and immediately opened a channel to the Eternal Dominion. Vexthor's face appeared on her screen and he looked like he'd aged a decade in a single day. Ambassador Chen, he said formally. Ambassador Vexthor, I trust you've reconsidered our earlier conversation. The High Council has ordered a full military assault on your system. Every ship in the kingdom will be mobilized. You have won a battle, but you cannot win a war against us. Sarah's expression didn't change. Is that what they told you? Let me tell you something about humans, Vex. When we're cornered, when we're threatened with extinction, we don't surrender. We innovate, we adapt. We find new and creative ways to survive. Your High Council is about to learn a very painful lesson about what happens when you threaten a species that's already survived the worst threat it ever faced. Itself. She leaned forward, her eyes hard. So yes, bring your full fleet. Bring every ship, every soldier, every weapon you have. We'll be waiting, and when it's over, you'll understand why we snickered when you promised devastation. Because we wrote the book on it. The High Council of the Star Kingdom convened in their grand chamber on the capital world of Throne. 12 species sat in judgment, each representing centuries of conquered civilizations and accumulated power. At the head of the council sat Emperor Vrathkor himself, a being so old that some whispered he had witnessed the formation of stars. The holographic display showed the Mars engagement on continuous loop, each replay making the council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Impossible, Councillor Thexera spat. A minor colony should not possess such firepower. Our intelligence was clearly deficient. Our intelligence was fine, countered Councillor Mirasol. The humans deceived us. They hid their true capabilities beneath a facade of peaceful expansion. Emperor Vrathkor raised one ancient hand, and silence fell across the chamber. His voice, when he spoke, resonated with the weight of millennia. The question is not how they deceived us. The question is what we do now. Fleet Commander Zarketh, your assessment. The hologram of Zarketh appeared, the commander's scarred face showing the strain of recent events. Your Majesty, I believe we are facing a strategic paradigm we have never encountered. The humans do not fight like the other species we have subjugated. They do not meet us with honor in open battle. They hide, they deceive, and they strike from positions we did not know existed. Cowardice, Councillor Thexera declared. Effectiveness, Zarketh corrected. Your Grace, in my 300 years of service, I have seen 40 species bend their knee to the kingdom. All of them fought conventionally. All of them lost. The humans are different. They studied us, analyzed us, and prepared countermeasures before we even knew they existed. Then we will simply bring overwhelming force, the Emperor decided. Assemble the Grand Armada. Every fleet, every vessel capable of void travel. We will darken their skies with our numbers and crush them through sheer might. Across the Star Kingdom, the machinery of war ground into motion. From 1,000 worlds, ships began to gather. The Grand Armada had only been assembled 3 times in the kingdom's history, each time to face an existential threat. Now it would be used to punish one small, defiant species. In Earth's military headquarters beneath the Swiss Alps, General Rebecca Foster watched the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. The micro-drones attached to Star Kingdom ships had done their job perfectly. Humanity knew exactly what was coming. They're pulling ships from everywhere, her intelligence chief reported. Estimate 12,000 capital ships, 40,000 support vessels, and enough troops to occupy 100 worlds. Good, Foster said, surprising everyone in the room. The more they commit, the better. General, with respect, how is this good? We barely survived their probe at Mars. This will be their full strength. Foster smiled. Because they're making the same mistake everyone makes about humans. They're assuming that because we're young, we're naive. They think bigger fleets mean inevitable victory. She brought up a different display showing the Sol system with various markers scattered throughout. We've had 200 years to prepare for this. Ever since we developed faster-than-light capability, we knew we'd eventually meet hostile species. So we prepared. She zoomed in on the asteroid belt. Operation Trojan Horse. We've been hollowing out asteroids for decades, turning them into mobile weapons platforms. Each one contains enough firepower to cripple a capital ship, and they're all disguised to look like ordinary rocks. Another display appeared, this one showing the Kuiper Belt beyond Neptune. Operation Ice Storm. Automated drone factories in the outer system. We've been building hunter-killer drones for 50 years. Current count, 3,200,000 units. Each one is designed to attach to enemy hulls, burn through the armor, and detonate inside. And the piece de resistance, she continued, pulling up schematics of Earth's moon, Project Moonbeam. We've turned Luna into the largest directed energy weapon in known space. The entire interior is one massive capacitor array. It can fire a beam capable of punching through any shield system we've analyzed. And it can do it once every 3 minutes. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. We let them come to us, Foster explained. We let them think they have the advantage. And then we teach them why humanity survived when we should have destroyed ourselves. We're creative, we're paranoid, and we never stop preparing for the worst. 3 months later, the Grand Armada arrived at the edge of the Sol system. The sight was enough to make even the most experienced human military personnel pause. The fleet was so large it created its own gravitational distortions. Ship after ship after ship, stretching back millions of kilometers. Emperor Vrathkor himself commanded the assault from his personal dreadnought, the Eternal Judgment. He had not personally led a military campaign in 500 years, but the humans had insulted the kingdom. They needed to be reminded of their place in the cosmic order. Open a channel to Earth, he commanded. Let them see what they face. Sarah Chen's face appeared on the view screen. Behind her, through the windows of the orbital station, Earth hung peaceful and blue. She looked remarkably calm for someone facing annihilation. Emperor Vrathkor, I presume, she said pleasantly. That's quite a fleet you've brought. Must have cost a fortune in fuel costs alone. The Emperor was not amused. Human, you have one final chance to submit. Surrender now, accept vassalage, and your species will be allowed to survive. Refuse, and every human world will be reduced to ash. You know, Sarah mused. A wise man once said that if you have to resort to threats, you've already lost the argument. But since you asked so nicely, I'm afraid the answer is no. Humanity chooses to remain free. Then you have chosen extinction. The Emperor cut the transmission. All ships advance. Begin planetary bombardment procedures. This ends today. The Grand Armada surged forward, a tide of metal and destruction. They crossed the orbit of Neptune, passed Uranus without resistance, and continued their steady advance toward the inner system. Where are their defensive fleets? Vexthor asked from his position on the bridge. Something felt wrong. The humans had shown they could fight at Mars. Why were they not defending their outer worlds? They are hiding as cowards do, Counselor Thexra sneered. He had insisted on being present for the final victory. They know they cannot stand against us. As the Armada approached Saturn, Foster gave the order. Activate Operation Ice Storm. In the Kuiper Belt, millions of drones woke up. Their propulsion systems, carefully designed to produce minimal heat signatures, pushed them on intercept courses with the Star Kingdom fleet. They were small, fast, and nearly impossible to detect until they were already attached to their targets. The first wave hit the rear elements of the Grand Armada. Drones clamped onto hulls, burned through armor with plasma cutters, and detonated their payloads deep inside the ships. In the space of 10 minutes, 300 Star Kingdom vessels were destroyed or crippled. Evasive maneuvers, Zarkith shouted. Point defense, fire at will. But the drones kept coming. They attacked from every angle. Too many to track, too small to easily hit. The mighty Grand Armada was being swarmed by gnats, and the gnats were winning. Press forward, the Emperor commanded. We will not be stopped by automated weapons. The Armada continued its advance, but now it left a trail of debris behind it. Ships were falling out of formation, their crews abandoning vessels that had been reduced to floating tombs. The mighty war machine that had conquered countless worlds was being picked apart piece by piece. As they entered the asteroid belt, Foster activated Operation Trojan Horse. What the Star Kingdom sensors had read as ordinary asteroids suddenly revealed their true nature. Hidden doors opened, weapons emerged, and the rocks themselves began firing. Railgun batteries, missile launchers, particle beams, all unleashed at point-blank range into the heart of the formation. The Grand Armada found itself fighting on all sides. Behind them, drones continued their relentless assault. Around them, asteroids revealed themselves to be deadly weapons platforms. And ahead, something else was waiting. The Eternal Judgment shuddered from multiple impacts. Emperor Vrathkor gripped his command throne, his ancient face showing shock for the first time in centuries. This cannot be, he whispered. They are children, an infant species. How do they possess such weapons? On the orbital station Vigilance, Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Grand Armada had already lost a quarter of its strength, and they hadn't even reached Earth yet. They keep making the same mistake, she said to Marcus. They assume that because we're young, we haven't thought about this. But we've been thinking about defending ourselves from superior forces since we threw rocks at predators in caves. Being the underdog is humanity's natural state. We're really good at it. She opened a channel to the Emperor. Your Majesty, you still have time to withdraw. This doesn't have to continue. Through the static of jamming and interference, the Emperor's voice came back, strained but defiant. The Star Kingdom does not retreat. We will break through your defenses and crush your world. Sarah sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. General Foster, activate Project Moonbeam. The moon had always been special to humanity. It was the first celestial body they had set foot on, the stepping stone to the stars and the symbol of their ambitions. What the Star Kingdom didn't know was that over the past century, it had become something else entirely, the largest weapon ever constructed by any species. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in chambers carved from solid rock, capacitor arrays stretched for kilometers. Every solar panel on the moon's surface, every fusion reactor in its colonies, had been secretly feeding power into the system for decades. The energy stored there could power Earth for a year, or it could be released in a single devastating pulse. General Foster gave the command from Earth. On the moon, technicians who had trained their entire careers for this moment initiated the firing sequence. Warning sirens echoed through the evacuated sections as massive amounts of power began to flow through the focusing arrays. On the surface, hidden beneath what appeared to be ordinary craters, the barrel of the weapon emerged. It was 3 kilometers wide, lined with superconducting coils that would focus and direct the energy. The stars reflected off its polished surface as it tracked toward its target. The Eternal Judgment, flagship of the Grand Armada, pride of the Star Kingdom, advancing toward Earth with the confidence of inevitable victory. Energy spike detected. A sensor officer on the Emperor's ship shouted, "Source Earth's moon. Magnitude is beyond our scale." Emperor Vrathkor turned to look at the tactical display, and for the first time in his long life he felt true fear. The energy reading was impossible. No weapon should be able to generate such power without tearing itself apart. All power to forward shields, Zarketh commanded. Brace for impact! The moonbeam fired. A column of pure energy, wider than a city, lanced across space at the speed of light. It struck the Eternal Judgment shields and didn't slow down. The shields flared brilliant white, held for precisely 2 seconds, and then collapsed. The beam punched through the Dreadnought's armor like it was paper, cored the ship from bow to stern, and emerged from the other side, still carrying enough energy to destroy the 3 ships behind it. The Eternal Judgment broke apart in a cascade of explosions, its reactor going critical and adding its own fury to the destruction. Emperor Vrathkor had just enough time to realize his mistake before his ship and his ancient life were vaporized. The Grand Armada stopped its advance. For the first time in the Star Kingdom's history, its fleet hung in space, leaderless and uncertain. They had come to deliver devastation, and instead found themselves being systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitives. Vexthor found himself in command of what remained. The Emperor's death had triggered succession protocols, but the new ruler was 3 weeks away by even the fastest courier. In the meantime, the fleet was his responsibility and his decision. He looked at the casualty reports. Over 4,000 ships destroyed, 200,000 personnel dead, and Earth's defenses were still operating at full capacity. The moonbeam was already recharging for another shot. Fleet Commander Vexthor, Sarah Chen's voice came over the open channel. I believe we've made our point. You're welcome to continue this engagement if you wish, but I think we both know how it will end. Your Emperor is dead. Your fleet is crippled, and we haven't even deployed our main battle groups yet. Main battle groups? Vexthor echoed weakly. Everything we've faced so far has been defensive installations. Did you think we'd risk our mobile forces against an enemy of unknown capability? We're not stupid, Vex. We let you come to us into our prepared defenses where we had every advantage. If you force us to come after you, it will be much, much worse. Vexthor thought about the Mars colony, about the hidden weapons, about the drones and the asteroids and the moon. The humans had planned this. All of it. They had anticipated every move, prepared for every contingency. They fought like they had been at war for their entire existence. Perhaps they had been. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Unconditional withdrawal from this system. You leave, you don't come back, and you spread the word to every species in the Star Kingdom. Earth is off limits. Humanity is not interested in being part of your empire. The High Council will never accept this. They will see it as weakness. They will send another fleet. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Then let me make you a deal, Vex. A better deal than the one you offered us. We know about the client species, the ones who serve you unwillingly. We know about the tribute you extract. The soldiers you conscript, the worlds you've stripped of resources. What if I told you we could offer them an alternative? What kind of alternative? Freedom, protection, an alliance of equals instead of masters and slaves. We've been monitoring your internal communications, Vex. We know about the unrest, the resistance movements, the species who dream of independence but fear annihilation if they rebel. What if they didn't have to fear that anymore? Vexthor's mind raced. What she was suggesting was not just the defeat of a fleet, but the dissolution of the entire kingdom. The client species vastly outnumbered the founding members. If they all rebelled simultaneously, backed by human military technology, you would go to war with the entire Star Kingdom? Even for species you've never met? We would offer them a choice, the same choice we wanted for ourselves. Self-determination. We'd provide the weapons, the training, and the support. After that, it's up to them. But here's the thing, Vex, we don't want to fight you. War is expensive, both in resources and in lives. We'd much rather trade with you, learn from you, maybe even be friends someday. But we will not be conquered. We will not submit, and if you try to force us, we will tear your empire apart from the inside. In the command centers across the solar system, humanity held its breath. This was the gamble. They had shown their military might, but they were also offering a peaceful way out. The question was whether the Star Kingdom would take it. Vexthor made his decision. I will convey your message to the High Council. The fleet will withdraw. But Ambassador Chen, you have made a powerful enemy today. The kingdom does not forget. Neither do we, Sarah replied. But we'd rather make friends than enemies. Think about that during your journey home. The Grand Armada began its retreat, limping away from Earth with its dead and wounded. It was the first time in the Star Kingdom's history that they had been decisively defeated. The news would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. The humans were as good as their word. Envoys appeared in the territories of client species, offering technology, weapons, and support. The message was always the same. You have the right to choose your own fate. On the mining world of Krelvar, where the insectoid Kree had labored under Star Kingdom oversight for 2 centuries, the message arrived like a thunderbolt. Human representatives appeared in secret, offering weapons that could penetrate Star Kingdom armor, shields that could deflect their energy weapons, and tactical training that could counter their superior numbers. The Kree uprising began on a Tuesday. By Friday, the Star Kingdom occupation force had been driven off-world. Similar stories played out on a dozen worlds, then 24, then 50. The empire that had stood for millennia began to crack. On throne, the new Emperor Zalvex watched his empire crumble with growing rage. The High Council was in chaos, with some members calling for total war against humanity, while others argued for immediate negotiations. They are dismantling everything we built, Councillor Thexra raged. We must strike back. With what? Councillor Mirasol countered. We lost our Grand Armada. Our client species are in open rebellion, and the humans continue to sit in their system, untouched and unchallenged. They defeated us without ever leaving their home. Then we rebuild, Emperor Zalvex declared. We forge a new fleet, subjugate the rebellious worlds, and return to Earth with overwhelming force. And they will destroy that fleet too, Vexthor said quietly. He had returned to throne a changed being, his confidence shattered by what he had witnessed. Your Majesty, with respect, you did not see what I saw. You did not face them. The humans are not like other species. They do not fight for glory or conquest. They fight for survival, and they have made an art form of it. He pulled up the recordings from Earth showing the tactical displays, the hidden weapons, the perfect coordination of their defenses. They planned for our invasion before we even knew they existed. While we were expanding our empire, they were studying us, analyzing our weaknesses, preparing countermeasures. They turned their own moon into a weapon that can destroy a dreadnought with a single shot. What else have they built that we haven't seen? The council chamber fell silent. The truth was undeniable. The humans had humiliated them, and worse, they had done it while offering mercy. That was perhaps the deepest wound of all. Then what do you suggest? The Emperor asked coldly. That we accept defeat? That we allow our client species to rebel without consequence? I suggest we adapt, Vexthor said. The humans offered us a choice: become their enemy and be destroyed, or become their partner and prosper. Perhaps it is time the Star Kingdom learned to coexist rather than dominate. Coexist? Vexthor spat. You speak of weakness. I speak of survival, Vexthor countered. The humans survived themselves. The first diplomatic summit between humanity and the Star Kingdom took place on neutral ground, a space station in the no man's land between their territories. The station had been hastily constructed by both sides, a symbol of their tentative cooperation. It orbited a dead star, lifeless and cold, but at least unthreatening to either party. Sarah Chen arrived with a small delegation. Marcus, General Foster, and Dr. Elena Rodriguez, humanity's leading xenosociologist. They had spent months preparing for this moment, studying every scrap of intelligence about Star Kingdom culture and politics. Emperor Zalvex arrived with considerably more fanfare. His entourage included Vex Thor, Counselor Mirasol, and a dozen advisors representing the various founding species of the kingdom. The emperor himself was younger than his predecessor, barely 300 years old, but he carried himself with the weight of expectation. The two groups met in a circular chamber, designed so that neither side sat at the head of the table. It was humanity's suggestion, and the emperor had grudgingly agreed. Small concessions, but they mattered. Ambassador Chen, the emperor began, his translator rendering his complex language into English. You requested this meeting. The Star Kingdom is prepared to listen. Your Majesty, Sarah replied, standing to address the room. 3 months ago, your Grand Armada came to our system with an ultimatum. Submit or be destroyed. We chose neither. Instead, we defended ourselves and sent your fleet home. But we didn't do it because we want war. We did it because we refuse to be subjugated. You humiliated us, Thexra interjected. You destroyed our emperor. You armed our client species in rebellion. And now you wish to negotiate? We wish to offer an alternative to the cycle of conquest and revenge, Sarah said calmly. Your empire has stood for thousands of years through military might. You conquer, you dominate, you extract tribute, but that model is unsustainable. Eventually, you'll meet a species you can't conquer, or your client species will unite against you. We're offering you a chance to evolve before that happens. General Foster activated a holographic display showing economic models. The Star Kingdom spends approximately 40% of its resources on military occupation and suppression of rebellions. Imagine if you could redirect those resources to trade, research, and development. Imagine if your client species were willing partners instead of resentful subjects. Your overall prosperity would increase exponentially. You speak of economics when you have destroyed our honor, the Emperor said, though his tone was more thoughtful than angry. The Star Kingdom rules because we are strong. If we appear weak, others will challenge us. Strength takes many forms, Dr. Rodriguez said, speaking for the first time. On Earth, we spent thousands of years believing that military might was the only form of strength that mattered. We built empires on conquest just like you, but those empires always fell, often violently. Do you know why? When no one answered, she continued. Because they were built on fear, and fear is exhausting to maintain. Eventually, the cost of holding everything together exceeds the benefits of control. But partnerships, alliances, mutual trade, these things grow stronger over time, because everyone benefits from their success. Counselor Mirasol leaned forward with interest. You believe the Star Kingdom should abandon its entire structure and become what? A democracy? A federation? We believe you should adapt, Sarah said. Keep your kingdom if you wish, but change how it operates. Offer your client species real representation in your government. Replace tribute with fair trade. Replace occupation with mutual defense pacts. The species under your rule don't hate you because of who you are. They hate you because they have no choice in their relationship with you. Vex Thor spoke up, his voice carrying the weight of experience. I have seen what happens when we give species choices, Your Majesty. The humans armed the Kree, and within weeks they overthrew our garrison. The same on Vexnar, Collix Prime, and 17 other worlds. If we give all our client species independence, the kingdom will cease to exist. Not if you give them a reason to stay, Marcus countered. He brought up another display, this one showing trade networks and economic data. Look at the Kree uprising. Yes, they expelled your military presence, but within a week they opened negotiations with you for trade agreements. They don't want to cut ties completely. They just want those ties to be consensual. The Emperor studied the data with a calculating expression. And if we refuse your suggestions? If we choose to rebuild our military and subjugate our rebellious territories? Then we continue to support those who seek independence, General Foster said bluntly. We'll provide weapons, training, and intelligence. And Your Majesty, we're very good at it. We've been fighting insurgencies and supporting resistance movements for centuries. It's one of our specialties. Furthermore, Sarah added, you'll be dedicating massive resources to internal conflicts while we expand peacefully. In 20 years, we'll have colonies throughout this sector. In 50 years, we'll have an economic sphere that rivals yours. And we'll do it without firing a shot in conquest because species will want to join us. The room fell silent as the Star Kingdom delegation absorbed this information. They were being offered a choice similar to the one they had given countless species: adapt or become irrelevant. Emperor Zalvex stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dead star. His reflection wavered in the transparent metal. When I was young, he said quietly, my mentor told me that empires built on conquest last forever. But I have studied your history, Ambassador Chen. I know about the Mongols, the Romans, the British Empire. They all fell. Yet you humans endure. He turned back to face the room. Perhaps it is time for the Star Kingdom to learn from its mistakes before they destroy us. I will take your proposals to the High Council. But I make no promises. You are asking us to dismantle everything we have built. We're asking you to transform it into something better, Sarah said. Something that can last not through fear, but through cooperation. The summit continued for 3 more days. They discussed trade agreements, technology exchanges, and potential frameworks for giving client species more autonomy. It was exhausting work, made harder by centuries of cultural differences and mutual suspicion. On the final day, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the Emperor's advisors, a Morgoth named Kelrin, proposed a hybrid system. Client species would be offered graduated autonomy based on their development level and stability. They could earn full independence through peaceful means, or they could choose to remain in the kingdom with full representation in the government. It preserves the kingdom while addressing the concerns of subject species, Kelrin explained, and it gives us a framework for peaceful transition rather than violent rebellion. Sarah recognized the proposal for what it was, a compromise that let the Emperor save face while fundamentally changing the nature of his empire. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The Earth Alliance would support such a system, she said carefully, with some modifications to ensure transparency and prevent abuse. They hammered out the details through the night. By dawn, they had the skeleton of an agreement. The Star Kingdom would begin the process of reformation. In exchange, humanity would cease arming rebel groups and would offer technological assistance to help manage the transition. As the summit concluded, Emperor Zalvex approached Sarah privately. You realize this may not work, he said. My people are proud. Many will see this as weakness. All meaningful change faces resistance, Sarah replied. But the alternative is watching your empire tear itself apart while humanity grows stronger. You're choosing the harder path, but it's the one with a future. The Emperor studied her for a long moment. Tell me, Ambassador, when we first came to your system with threats of annihilation, did you already have this outcome planned? Sarah smiled slightly. We planned for every possible outcome, Your Majesty. War, peace, everything in between. That's what humans do. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. You truly are a frightening species, the Emperor said, but there was a hint of respect in his voice. Only when we need to be, Sarah said. The rest of the time we're quite pleasant. As both delegations departed the neutral station, neither side was entirely satisfied, but both recognized they had avoided a catastrophic war. The Star Kingdom would begin its transformation, and humanity would expand into the galaxy not as conquerors, but as partners. Word of the agreement spread across the galaxy within weeks. Some client species celebrated, seeing hope for peaceful independence. Others remained skeptical, waiting to see if the Star Kingdom would truly honor its commitments. And throughout it all, humanity continued its quiet expansion, building colonies, establishing trade routes, and forming alliances. They had proven they could fight when necessary, but they had also shown they preferred to build rather than destroy. The galaxy was watching humanity now, curious about this young species that had faced down an ancient empire and offered mercy instead of vengeance. Some saw them as naive idealists who would eventually be crushed by harsher realities. Others saw them as the future, a new way of organizing galactic civilization. Only time would tell which assessment was correct. 5 years had passed since the summit at the Dead Star. The galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted, least of all the ancient powers who had thought themselves eternal. On the planet Krelvar, the Kree had established a thriving democracy. Their cities, once drab industrial centers dedicated to resource extraction for the Star Kingdom, now bloomed with art, culture, and innovation. Human engineers had helped them develop clean energy systems, and Cree architects had combined their natural talent for structure with human design philosophy to create something entirely new. Ambassador Chen, now serving as humanity's galactic representative, toured a manufacturing facility with Prime Minister Chirac, the leader of the Free Krau. This facility produces medical equipment for 17 different species, Chirac said, his mandibles clicking with pride. We trade freely with the Star Kingdom, with humanity, and with a dozen independent worlds. Our economy has grown by 400% since liberation. And your people are happy? Sarah asked, though she could see the answer in the bustling streets and the absence of military checkpoints. Happy and free, Chirac confirmed. We no longer mine our world to exhaustion to pay tribute. We trade as equals and we keep the fruits of our labor. The humans taught us that freedom and prosperity are not mutually exclusive. Similar stories played out across former Star Kingdom territories. The Zephyrites had established a confederation of floating cities above their gas giant home, becoming the premier shipbuilders in the sector. The Morgoth had turned their desert world into an agricultural marvel, using human terraforming techniques. The Coluxians had become renowned for their universities, where species from across the galaxy came to study. Not all transitions had been peaceful. On 7 worlds, hardline Star Kingdom loyalists had attempted to maintain control through force. Each time, human military advisors had helped local resistance movements execute precision campaigns that minimized civilian casualties while overwhelming occupying forces. The message was clear. The old way of doing things was over. The Star Kingdom itself had been transformed. Emperor Zalvex had kept his word, though it had nearly cost him his throne. The High Council now included representatives from former client species, giving them real power in galactic affairs. The kingdom's military had been reduced by 60%, with those resources redirected to infrastructure, education, and trade. Councillor Mirasol had become one of the reform's strongest advocates after seeing the economic data. The kingdom was actually wealthier now than it had been under the old system. Willing trade partners were more profitable than reluctant tributaries, and the elimination of constant rebellion suppression had freed up enormous resources. Not everyone was pleased with the changes. Councillor Thexra had led a faction of conservatives who saw the reforms as surrender. They had attempted a coup 3 years earlier, trying to seize control and return to the old ways. The coup had failed within hours, crushed not by human intervention but by the kingdom's own people, who had seen the benefits of the new system and refused to go back. Thextra now lived in comfortable exile on a remote world, writing bitter treatises about the decline of traditional values that very few people read. Vexthor, meanwhile, had become something unexpected, a bridge between old and new. As the kingdom's ambassador to the Human Alliance, he had developed a deep understanding of human culture and psychology. He had even visited Earth, walking the battlefields of World War II, touring the museums dedicated to human conflicts, and beginning to understand why humanity was the way it was. You carry your history with you, he had told Sarah during that visit, standing in the ruins of Hiroshima. Every human I meet seems to understand that civilization is fragile. You never forget how close you came to destroying yourselves. That's our gift and our curse, Sarah had replied. We know what devastation looks like because we've lived through it. We know what it takes to build because we've had to rebuild so many times. And we know that the only way to survive is to work together, even with former enemies. She had gestured to the peace memorial around them. This city was destroyed by an atomic bomb. 80 years later, it's a thriving metropolis and a symbol of peace. That's what humans do. We remember the worst of ourselves so we can strive for the best. Now, 5 years after the summit, a new challenge had emerged. A species called the Valorians from beyond the kingdom's former borders had been watching humanity's rise with concern. They were an old race, even older than the Star Kingdom's founders, and they had maintained their isolation through superior technology and strategic positioning. The Valorian Conclave had sent a message to both humanity and the Star Kingdom. Cease your expansion or face consequences. The emergency meeting was held on the space station where the original summit had taken place. Sarah arrived to find the chamber already crowded with representatives from dozens of species. The Star Kingdom, the Kree Federation, the Zephyrite Confederation, the Morgoth Alliance, and many others. The galaxy's new order gathered together. Emperor Zalvex opened the proceedings. The Valorian Conclave has issued an ultimatum. They claim our expansion threatens their territory and security. They demand we halt all colonization efforts in the outer reaches and withdraw from 12 contested systems. Or what? Asked Prime Minister Chirac. They'll attack us? A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. A Valorian, tall and crystalline, glowing with internal light. We will defend our borders by any means necessary. Your combined forces are impressive by galactic standards, but you have not faced Valorian military technology. We have weapons that can sterilize entire star systems. Sarah stood, her voice calm but firm. Ambassador. I'm sorry, what is your name? The Valorian seemed surprised by the question. I am Sentinel Corallix of the Eternal Conclave. Sentinel Corallix 5 years ago, the Star Kingdom came to humanity with a similar ultimatum. Submit or be destroyed. Do you know what happened? We are aware of your conflict, Corallix said dismissively. The Star Kingdom underestimated you. We will not make the same mistake. I don't think you understand, Sarah continued. The mistake wasn't underestimating our weapons. It was underestimating our determination. Humanity has faced extinction many times, and we're still here. More importantly, we're no longer alone. The species in this room represent a new way of organizing galactic civilization, through cooperation, not domination. Vexthor rose to speak. Sentinel, I was there when the Star Kingdom tried to subjugate humanity. I watched our Grand Armada burn, but more importantly, I watched what came after. The humans didn't conquer us in revenge. They offered us partnership. They showed us that there was more profit in peace than in war. The Star Kingdom is stronger now than it ever was as an empire, because our strength comes from willing cooperation, not forced subjugation. Other representatives began to stand one by one, adding their voices. The Kree stand with humanity, Chirac declared. We know what it means to be threatened by superior force. We will not submit again. The Zephrites pledge our shipyards to the common defense, said High Engineer Velmora. We will build whatever is needed. The Morgoth offer our strategic expertise, added War Leader Gorthak. We know warfare. We will teach everyone. Sentinel Corallix watched this display with what might have been confusion. You would go to war to defend systems you have only recently colonized? The cost would be enormous. But you're right, Sarah agreed. War would be costly in lives and resources and time. That's why we're not going to war. Instead, we're inviting you to join us. The chamber fell silent. Even Emperor Zalvex looked surprised. Join you? Corallix repeated. You face our ultimatum and you respond with an invitation? Why not? Sarah said, spreading her hands. You're concerned about our expansion threatening your territory. Fair enough. Come to the table. Help us draw boundaries that work for everyone. Share your technology. Learn from ours. Trade with us. Join the alliance, and if we refuse, then we'll respect your borders and find other directions to expand. The galaxy is infinite, Sentinel. There's room for everyone, but if you attack us, you'll find that we're not alone anymore. Every species in this chamber has learned the same lesson. Cooperation beats conflict. And if you force us to fight, we'll do it together. General Foster activated a tactical display. Just so we're clear about what that means, humanity has 17 defensive fleets, each capable of the same level of coordination we showed at Mars. The Star Kingdom, despite downsizing, still maintains 4,000 capital ships with crews that now fight willingly, rather than out of obligation. The Kree have developed hunter-killer drones that make ours look primitive. The Zephrites can build ships faster than anyone in the galaxy, and the Morgoth know strategy that predates your conclave by millennia. She let that sink in before continuing. You claim you can sterilize star systems. Maybe you can. But can you sterilize 100 systems simultaneously while defending your own territory from coordinated attacks on multiple fronts? Because that's what you'd face. Not an empire fighting to conquer you, but an alliance fighting to survive. And Sentinel, humans are really good at survival. Corallix was silent for a long moment processing this information.